So, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today. Tell everybody listening who you are and what you're about.
Hey y'all, my name is Sean Clifford. I am a father of four and also the CEO of a company called Canopy. Canopy is a company that has been leveraging advanced technology to try and provide a healthier and safer internet experience for children. So we've been out there for a little while, just released our new product, and very excited to jump into the space and give parents who are navigating this crazy new digital world a tool.
Absolutely. And you know what? I appreciate you doing that. This really isn't my wheelhouse. And so when I go on other people's shows, I always get asked this question, how do I, keep my kids safe online? We want to make sure that they aren't exposed to pornography and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that you're here to really, talk to everybody because this is a concern and it should be a concern about, for every parent that's out there. So one of the things I find there's a big generation gap, and I bet you guys see this too. You know, when before the internet, pornography was in print or on VHS, and that was it. So kind of explain to us for those of us who aren't in the tech industry, how has the internet really changed the landscape of adult material online?
Absolutely. I think the first thing just to emphasize is it most certainly has changed, and it's changed in some very profound ways that impact kids in particular.
Right.
At a high level, I would say that if you go back 20 years, pornography was epitomized by Playboy. It was maybe a magazine with 15 images in that were static, that was found under your uncle's bed, perhaps difficult to access. And it was really a limited thing. It was
Hmm.
also embedded in a culture that was less favorable towards pornography overall. In that world, you had to work to find pornography. Today, you have to work hard to avoid being exposed to it.
Yeah.
And we can talk a little bit about some of the changes that have taken place that result in that. But the one that's kind of, I think, most problematic for parents and for their kids in particular is that it used to be that even in the early days of the internet, there was this walled area, couple bad websites. And if you just didn't go there, you were fine.
Right.
Right? That's where it was. And maybe kids tried to go there. And if you just blocked those few domains, it was fine. And we now live in a world where those walls have completely crumbled. We sometimes say internally, we went from an internet that was black and white to one that's 50 shades of gray, where
Hmm.
you'll now find pornography everywhere, right? It's on the bad websites, which are very accessible, but you'll also find it on Reddit, on Twitter, in a video game chat for Roblox. And one of the stats that really hits home with this is 60%, according to one study, of kids' first exposure to pornography is accidental. They are
Hmm.
not out there looking for it. It just
Right.
finds them. And we can talk about that. So that's kind of the broader landscape in terms of how it's changed. And I want to talk about the nature of porn itself, which is just fundamentally different. Um, Old porn, as we call it, was, again, a magazine with static images, limited in number, hard to get. New porn is something that you find online that offers you unending novelty, that is
Mhm.
instantly accessible, and is much more visually compelling. So instead of a static image, think of high definition videos. The combination of those three things results in an experience that is just far more compelling to the brain and therefore far more likely to become addictive. So its accessibility also, I think, has played an important role for kids where um, there's an escalation cycle that sets in, and we can talk about this in a little bit. But
Yeah.
having unending novelty always at your fingertips with no real limits on what you can consume, it's not good for a developing brain.
Yeah, you talked about how we've gone from static images to all of a sudden it's almost I'll say like an interactive kind of experience now. And because of that, and you brought up the whole it can be an addiction. Online pornography has been called the new drug for a few years now. Like what exactly does that mean?
It's a great question. So let's start with the definition of a drug. So one definition is something that affects the structure and function of the body. So if we want to take it from that level and understand how pornography actually impacts us, and we should note at the outset, the impact for a developed brain is different from a kid whose brain is still
Sure.
developing itself. but it does impact the brain. That's the first thing to note. So there have been countless studies now done with, thanks to a lot of advances in neuroscience and neuroimaging, that enable us to see how pornography is actually shaping the pleasure response center of the brain, the neurochemicals that are firing back and forth, and also the shape of the brain itself. I mean, you can do studies that look at a porn addict's brain, and you can see the actual changes in the brain.
Wow.
So that's one level. The
Mm-hmm.
second is the body itself. This stat is a little bit dark, and so we try at Canopy not to be fear mongering, but we also want to report
The truth, right?
but pornography is driving physiological changes in people, and especially young men. And the stat that I heard from a counselor a few weeks ago, but then again yesterday, is that if you go back before 2010, the number of men who had erectile dysfunction symptoms that were under age 30 was statistically zero. In the last year that they did this, that has jumped to 30%. And it's really tied to, look, it's correlation, right? So we're still trying to unpack it,
Sure.
but the
Right.
strongest hypothesis is that it's tied to internet, or fast speed internet, and the pornography that's made available by it. So it is driving impacts to the brain. And then the third thing, and I think this is really where the drug terminology is illustrative, is that pornography is addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at the addiction mechanism and you compare pornography to tobacco, to alcohol, to heroin, it is operating in a very similar way in terms of the escalating function, in terms of how it's hijacking the brain, in terms of how over time people become desensitized. They need to engage in more and more extreme activities. The stimuli has to get stronger, things like that. So I think that's really where the drug terminology is instructive. We can debate the semantics about it, but at the highest level, pornography is addictive, it's formative, and it's shaping us in ways that we might not want to be shaped.
Yeah, I've heard, I think at some point in either my middle school or high school career, they had somebody come and talk to like our class about drugs and how bad it was. And this person was a recovered addict. And she said something to me that always stuck with me. She said, I tried drugs for the first time and I loved it. And ever since then, I was just chasing that high because it never felt that way again. And it sounds like it's kind of the same cycle here with adult material too, right?
That's absolutely right. And one of the things that they found is that when you are addicted to pornography, in that chase for that same stimulus, you have to chase novelty. And so a porn addict is not watching the same porn today as they were 6 months ago or even a year ago. It's constantly shifting. It's always new. And oftentimes it becomes a little bit more extreme in a number of areas. And so not everyone who watches porn becomes an addict, right? I want to be very clear about
Sure,
that.
right.
But when you start down that pathway, just the way it works on your brain, you're constantly chasing novelty. And there's a variety of reasons why there's actually an interesting study called that has unveiled the Coolidge effect, which is novelty, especially with respect to sex, has a much bigger impact on the pleasure, the reward center of the brain. So it does send someone down a rabbit hole, always chasing that same high, which as your brain becomes desensitized, has to keep getting stranger and stranger or more novel in order to reach it.
Right. And this is a family show, and I appreciate you keeping that in mind because I'm sure there's a lot more stories that you can tell us, but we'll leave it at it gets worse than that. So you told us a little while ago that kids are getting exposed to this stuff earlier and earlier, and a lot of times it's accidental. What age typically are kids encountering this sort of material online?
Yeah, it's a great question. Some studies say average age is 13. Some say that it's as low as 10.
Mhm.
I think it's fair to say, based off an assessment of the data, that the average American kid has been exposed to pornography before they enter middle school,
Mm.
just to put that in perspective.
Sure.
And we can debate the exact age. I mean, we're difficult to know, but almost all the evidence also suggests that it's dropping, and it's dropping year over year. And much of this is being driven by the ubiquitous nature of the modern smartphone, right?
Hmm.
So that's really the contributing factor. So, I mean, when you think about it, never before have we given kids as young as 8 immediate and instantaneous access to anything that can be found online. But effectively, that's at some level what we're doing when we hand over the smartphone. And so that's one thing that's kind of disconcerting. And just the second thing that I'll note along there is oftentimes when we share this with parents, the response is, I've done a good job with my child. They're not gonna go looking for this like that.
Hmm.
I'm worried about other drivers, not my own.
Right. Sure. Sure.
And the sad thing is that so much of it is accidental. And so again, it's not even that these kids at this age are out there looking for it. It's that it's so prevalent. And we have some reason to believe that there's actually an interest in it finding kids, right? If you can get them exposed to this and addicted early, it's a lifelong customer.
You've talked a lot about smartphones and how this has changed stuff. And I can't tell you how many good, honest parents that I know will get their kid a smartphone and they'll just hand it over to them and just assume that everything is okay. And what they don't realize is that your phone here is a gateway to the world and it's going to show everything that is in the world. But not only can they go out and find it, but the world can come in and find them, right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, we have empathy for those parents in the sense that we're very pro tech. We
Mhm.
think the smartphone's amazing, and it really does provide all of us a portal to education and news and connection with friends and family. And so we're pro tech, and I think part of the reason why they hand it out is they see the possibility, they see the good, the things that their kids can do that it enables that they actually want to facilitate. And so we're very sympathetic to that. And I think for so many of them, also one of the challenges that they didn't grow up with it, right? So, I had a cell phone when I was in high school that I don't even know that we had texting capability back then. So
Yeah,
the
right.
challenges, the downside, the risks oftentimes just aren't top of mind for them. And there's a few examples of that, but part of what we're trying to do is to educate them about the reality of what's out there. And when they find out, inevitably they want to take steps to make sure that their kids are they're going to be okay.
Right. And so kind of to make matters worse for people or for kids who have smartphones, what I once thought was kind of inconceivable is something that's come very commonplace, and that is sexting. Kind of give us an overview of what sexting is.
Yeah, sexting is this phenomenon that a lot of parents in particular have a hard time imagining actually is a thing, but regrettably is a thing. So, sexting refers to when you send sexually explicit content, typically a photo, using a smartphone. And so, the data around this, which keep in mind is a few years dated, it's only picked up in the last few years, but 1 out of 4 American teenagers has received a sext, 1 out of 7 has sent one, and 2/3 of all American girls 18 and above have been asked for at least them to send a nude photo at once. So it's out there, it's prevalent, it's becoming more common. We hear terrible stories that it's particularly growing in prevalence for high school freshman girls, right? So they'll enter
Mhm.
into a new high school, and within the first few weeks, they'll be bombarded with requests, typically from upperclassmen guys. And so this is problematic for a number of reasons. Number one, it's illegal, right? You
Yeah.
cannot send nude images of anyone under the age of 18. So it's problematic from that perspective, but also digital is forever. And so one of the sad stories that we occasionally hear is when, a typical example is a girl will send her boyfriend a nude photo or even a risque photo,
Mhm.
and they'll break up and he'll share it. And then it kind of goes viral at the school. And that has a pretty profound impact on, this young woman in a lot of ways. It shakes the confidence. It's just devastating. And so that's regrettably happening more and more often, and also is a entry point into people just being exposed to explicit content at younger ages. So It's one of the regrettable, we love FaceTime. We love the ability to capture everything on the fly. And this is one of the unfortunate uses that the tool's been applied towards.
Right. So what are some steps that we as parents can take to be proactive about helping our kids from encountering pornography online and sexting all at the same time?
Absolutely. First thing that I would say is just prepare your kids. Prepare yourself, but also prepare your kids. So what do I mean by that? Number one, have age appropriate conversations early and often. It's not one talk and you're done and you kind of check the box and move on. This is something that you need to be sure that you're engaging with your kids. I know it's uncomfortable.
Mm.
I don't look forward to those conversations. I can't imagine anyone does. But
Right.
it's important because ultimately, just given the stats and the reality of how this happens, do you want your child to learn about pornography from you or from Google or from a friend, right? So as uncomfortable as that is, you need to prepare them. And there's some great books out there. Good Pictures, Bad Pictures is one that
Mm.
helps you do it when your kids are young in a way that makes sense for them. So that's the first, is have the conversations. The second is I would impress upon them that you are always there to have a conversation. As your kids are navigating this, things are going to pop up that they see. They're going to be asked for certain things. They'll be engaged in benign research online and come across something. And you want them to know when that happens that they should come talk to you. You won't be upset and you can have a conversation. And it can actually help them understand why people do crazy things online and kind of be, sympathize with them. It's like, that's crazy. Like, what are they doing? But you need to know that when that happens, kids, they can get scared and they don't know what to do and they're worried you'll be angry. So make sure they know you can come talk to them. So that's on the
Right.
preparation side. Then
Hmm.
on the protection side, look, I have a hammer. I see lots of nails, but you have to put tools and safeguards in place. I think if you're going to give your child access to a smartphone or a tablet or a computer that in turn provides them access to anything on the internet and everything on the internet, you need to have safeguards in place. We really think of this like driving a car. You don't hand the keys to an 8-year-old and just say, good luck, you'll be fine, right? You walk them through the stages. The goal is for them ultimately to have that independence and that freedom, but to make sure that they're prepared for what's out there and that they can make informed, smart decisions and be responsible. So we think putting a filter like Canopy is a great step that you can take to really make sure that as they're young, they aren't making some of those costly mistakes. And then the next thing with respect to protecting them is limit how technology is used in your home. And I would say bound technology in time and in place. When I
Hmm.
say in time, your phone should have a bedtime and it should be
Hmm.
before you go to bed. When I say in place, I mean, we have a rule at our house, no phones in the bedroom, period. You just don't bring it in there. My kids are still young right now, so it's not an issue for them. And it's actually been a struggle. Like my wife and I both had to go get analog alarm clocks. We don't want it. We want to set the example that this does not belong in the bedroom. And so doing things like that, I think can be really important to set the example for your kids so that they understand that these tools should serve them and they're very alluring, right? They're always tempting and they're built that way on design. And we need to put protections in place to make sure that they're used appropriately.
Very cool. I see a lot of people like yourself who are passionate about helping families and about helping kids. We have seen this pendulum of adult content swing way far out. Do you think this generation of parents, you and me, who are really trying to make a difference, do you think we can get that pendulum to ever swing back to where this will kind of calm down and won't be so commonplace, won't be so mainstream? Or is this something we're just going to have to live with for a while? I'll ask you to kind of tell me what you think the future is going to be like.
I don't think the pendulum swinging back is inevitable, but I already see signs that suggest it is moving in that direction. And I think this is driven by a number of different factors. First and foremost, the science is just catching up, right? Thanks to advances in neuroscience and neuroimaging in particular, we now see what's happening. We used to speculate that, porn was tempting. Now we can actually look inside the brain and understand exactly how it's working. And the preponderance of the evidence suggests that it's problematic. It does have an impact on your brain. It is addictive. And as more medical officials, scientists, public health officials step forward and say, hey guys, this is a problem. I think that's going to start to shift it. Right now, the framing is, free speech and censorship. Like we don't want to block anything. I think the new frame will be one of health. Like, is this actually making you healthy? And we're already starting to see a movement there. I think you're also starting to see, different groups, some feminists that historically have been pro-pornography in the wake of the Me Too movement are starting to question whether that hasn't contributed to a culture that, is not respectful of women. So you're starting to see some of them come into the fold. You're seeing a lot more addiction counselors, right? So if you go talk to your average psychologist, psychiatrist, or counselor, like pornography addiction is just spiking in terms of what they're dealing with. So I think they're aware of it. And then lastly, it's just the sheer explosion in the number of parents who are seeing like what's out there and they're shocked by it because it's not what they grew up with. It's not what they expected. And when they see just how bad it is, I think they're more prone to take action. So that's kind of on the cultural landscape. My hope is that, some of the tech that we're offering at Canopy also is actually going to provide a tool for parents to do something about it. And I think one of the challenges for parents has been 5 years ago, if you were concerned about your kid being exposed to pornography, there weren't that many tools that could really help you avoid it. The tools out there typically are domain based. So they could block those 10 bad websites, but guess what? There's 10 new ones today and there'll be 10 new ones tomorrow and didn't really help you. And secondly, it's now everywhere, right? So you're left with a choice. Do you block all of Twitter, all of Reddit, all of these other sites that have good and bad because of the risk that it's out there? As the tech gets better, and it is, and I'm really grateful to our development team that's been pioneering a lot of this, we think there's going to be an opportunity to actually act on it. So this feeling of futility is gradually subsiding as people once again feel empowered that they actually can do something.
That's great. So, I'm interested in your story. Why take the time to invest in this? Why take the time to create Canopy?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the first thing I would say is I never envisioned myself, I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to go jump into the strange world of obscene online content. But look, it's really driven by three things. One, I've seen this issue destroy lives. And I've got a number of friends who, have had relationships, whether it's a marriage or otherwise, that has just been negatively impacted by this in a profound way. And I think that's one of the issues that we just have to make sure does not impact the next generation. It's avoidable pain. Number two, I think we're trying to wrestle with two of the great questions of the age. I think one question is, can we live well with technology? And, we're kind of engaged in a massive social experiment where with ubiquitous internet-enabled devices, especially adopted by, 90+% of kids, like, how's that going to work out? And so far, some of the data is pretty concerning. And so we need to figure out, I don't think you're going to put the cat back in the bag. I don't think you're going to get rid of smartphones or the internet. So we have to figure out how to live well with it. And I think that's really critical. I think one of the second big questions of the age is, can we successfully regulate our appetites? And right now, we've never had easier access to the things that we want than ever before. Right. And figuring out how to make smart decisions that actually ultimately lead towards fulfillment and happiness, I think is going to be challenging. And we are wrestling with this right now, both as adults, but also with our kids and how we can provide them the guardrails and the understanding of how to make those smart decisions. So that's kind of the second reason. And then just the third is, I've got 4 kids. I want them to be kids, right? I want this conversation, these uncomfortable conversations, to be pushed out as long as possible. I want them ultimately to have healthy understanding of sex, healthy understanding of what a good relationship looks like. I want them to get married and fall in love and have a happy marriage. And I think all of those things are a lot harder in a world that's saturated with pornography. And so, for those reasons, I think this is just an important thing, right? Not always the most pleasant conversations to have. Some of the research can be dark, but I think we have an opportunity to really help kids be kids, right? And that to me is will get me up in the morning, and that's what motivates us at Canopy. So
Right. Let's help kids be kids. I like that. Sean, thanks for being with me today. Thanks for educating me. I know people are going to want to know more about you. So where can they find out more about you?
yeah, so they can come check us out at the website, canopy.us/secure dad. There you can find out more about some of our products, how we're bringing, cutting edge tech and artificial intelligence, machine learning, things like that to actually help make sure that your kid can experience a completely porn free internet, um, but still go explore freely. And so we're really excited about that. We threw in a promo code there, Secure Dad will get you 10% off for life. And really excited to kind of get out into the market and help families. Right, that's what we're really excited about, and really appreciate you having me on today and the chance just to chat more and all the things you're doing to help families navigate a crazy new world.
Sean, I appreciate that. I appreciate the code for anybody who's listening here to hopefully, be proactive and helping their kids avoid pornography and to learn about it and to be educated about it, man. I appreciate you and I appreciate what your company is doing.
Thanks so much, Andy.